Okay, we're continuing with the book here, Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes, going in alphabetical order. We're in the letter G. We're going to talk about the brothers Gracchi. So this is Tiberius Gracchus and Gaius Gracchus. This is back in the days of ancient Rome, the Roman Republic, okay, about 120 BC, before Christ. Okay, here's the two brothers on the hand, of property, saying that, all men should have a right to property, the men that served Rome, that fought for Rome, okay? So the first one, the older brother, was Tiberius, and he first went before the Roman Senate to speak for the men who had fought for Rome and that they should have land granted to them. Okay, they were grandsons of Scipio Africanus, the great conqueror of Africa, of Carthage, who had defeated Hannibal in the Second Punic War. Their father had been the Roman consul, so these were powerful, well-known men, and their mother was Cornelia, another famous person in ancient Rome. So anyways, Tiberius, in 133 BC, before Christ, he was tribune for the plebeians. Plebeians are the poor people of ancient Rome, the peasants, the regular people, the public. And he put forth ideas of land reform, agrarian reform. He wanted to put a limit on the size of the big farms owned by the rich patricians, the aristocrats. He wanted small farms to be given to the poor family. And just so you know, this is sort of the reason why everybody should study ancient Rome, is to learn how politicians behave, how men behave when they're given unlimited power. Because once you've studied ancient Greece and ancient Rome, you don't become such a chump for all the modern BS, okay? All right, so anyways, Tiberius, trying to do the right thing, stand up for the hardworking plebeians, peasants. He pissed off the aristocrats, the Roman Senate, and what they did is they were so angry at him because they would lose money on this, because they would lose land. These multi-millionaire senators and whatnot, that they broke their benches that they were sitting on, and they used the wooden legs from the benches as clubs to beat Tiberius to death. They then threw his body in the Tiber River, and they killed 300 of his followers. Okay, that is a pretty routine story if you study the history of ancient Rome. And so I tell you that because ancient Rome was the most civilized place in the world, and it was still a brutal, barbaric at many times type of place. And here is them, taking the benches and using them to beat to death Tiberius and some of his followers. This is Roman history. There's a lot of stuff like this when you study Roman history, and it's highly valuable that you study it because you very quickly start to see patterns. And you can predict what's going to happen after you've seen these sorts of patterns over and over again. And the exact same things are happening nowadays, except just with modern technology. Okay, you have to understand what a government is. A government is a group of men who work as partners to loot a country. And then the amount of good they do for the country is proportionate to the amount that they like the country, and that there are checks and balances upon them. Okay, this is how it has always been everywhere in the world. Okay, later in 123 BC, the younger brother Gaius was also a tribune for the plebeians, for the peasants, and he put forth similar reforms with a similar response. End of his career, end of his life. This time the Senate hired a man to get Gaius, and they paid a reward gold that would match the head of his empty skull filled with lead. Thousands of his followers were also killed. I'll show you a painting of that. Okay, here's the painting of Gaius Gracchus also being killed for promoting land reform, to give some land a chance, to have a plot of land and a future for the poor people. Okay, and the angry senator Patricians went after him. In 100 BC, just 20 years later, another tribune tried to propose similar reform, same response. The Patricians just ended his career and killed him. 10 years later, another tribune did the same thing, and they also killed him. This is how it goes. So what's the point? Never ever suggest a real reform. The only type of reform that gets approved is fake reforms that are supported by the big money donors. And that's why people tell me, oh, are you going to reform medicine? Yeah, right. Take a look at Nick Gonzalez. He tried to reform cancer treatment. They bumped him off, okay? And don't you think that that's just how it goes? Big money is the ability to make other people do stuff. And big money has enough money to make people do just about anything. So that's why you could never really have real reform all at once, because big money doesn't want it, and they've got real power. Okay, the fate of Drusus and the brothers Gracchi, Marcus Drusus was the other tribune killed there, set a pattern in Rome that culminated with the removal of Julius Caesar in 44 BC, and that was the end of the Roman Republic. So Rome had initially been a monarchy. They didn't like that. Then they were a republic, and that was really, they did a lot of great things during that time. And then they transitioned into becoming an empire. Rome became an empire with Augustus Caesar, Octavian, and he was the first empire. Here's just a quote from Tiberius Gracchus. He said to the men, and many of them had served Rome. They had fought for Rome. And he said, "You fight and die to provide luxury for other men, yet you don't have a foot of ground to call your own. Yes, the shepherd will shear his sheep, but he should not skin them. The wild beasts that roam Italy, they have their dens to dwell in. But the men who fight and die for our country own nothing but the common air and light. With their wives and children, it is their fate to wander homeless over the face of the earth. The truth is that they fight and die to protect the wealth and luxury of others." The Romans are called the masters of the world, but these Romans do not possess a single clod of dirt which they can truly call their own. Tiberius Gracchus. Okay? And so, like I said, a government is a group of men who loot a country. And unless there's checks and balances on them, like the United States Constitution, free speech for everybody, Christianity, that there's a higher God above the ruler. The reason why rulers hate Christianity is because the Christians are loyal to Christ, to doing what is right, not to being puppets, not to just looking the other way for bad behavior. No, that which you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. And Ayn Rand said it too. If you guarantee individual rights, all rights shall follow. But that's the reason why they don't like Christians right there, because Christians will do what is right, and they don't care about what some ruler says. The rules of Jesus Christ and God are above the rules of a ruler, okay? And that's what you need to make America great. You want to make America great? You got to start with Makkah, make America Christian again. Otherwise, it ain't going to work. Anybody who's realistic knows that.